Good evening, everybody. I hope your week is treating you well, and I hope you're having a blessed and wonderful Wednesday evening and had a wonderful day, hopefully a wonderful week so far. I know that I enjoy at the moment. I drive around and I see people getting their gardens turned over or their fields for planting and different things, and just the smell of spring is in the air, and it thrills my heart so much. But nevertheless, this evening as we begin to dive off into Daniel, this evening we're going to find our place in verses 10 through 18, and we're going to be talking about the vision or the dream that Nebuchadnezzar has, and as it relates to Nebuchadnezzar, what exactly it looks like and how it unfolds, and kind of go from there. But this evening as we begin, we're going to start in verse 10 there, and I'll pull it up on the screen there for you. It says, "In the visions of my mind, as I was lying in bed, I saw this. There was a tree in the middle of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew large and strong. Its top reached to the sky, and it was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit was abundant, and on it was food for all. Wild animals found shelter under it. The birds of the air lived in its branches, and every creature was fed from it. And as I was lying in my bed, I also saw in the vision of my mind an observer, a holy one coming down from heaven. He called out loudly, 'Cut down the tree and chop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump with its roots in the ground, and with a band of iron and bronze around it in the tender grass of the field. Let him be drenched with dew from the sky and share the plants of the earth with the animals. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal for 7 periods of time. And this word is by decree of the observers. The matter is a command from the holy ones, and this is so the living will know that the Most High is ruler over the kingdom of men. He gives it to anyone he wants, and sets the lowliest of men over it. And this is the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now Belteshazzar, that is Daniel, tell me the interpretation, because none of the wise men of my kingdom can make the interpretation known to me, but you can, because you have the spirit of the holy gods." So, as we dive off into verses 10 through 12, I just want to kind of look at this real quick. In the visions of my mind, as I was lying in bed, I saw this. There was a tree in the middle of the earth, and its height was great, and the tree grew large and strong. Its top reached to the sky, and it was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit was abundant, and on it was food for all. Wild animals found shelter under it, and the birds of the air lived in its branches, and every creature was fed from it. So here, what we're finding in verses 10 through 12 is that verse 10 describes that Nebuchadnezzar sees this tree that was great in the midst of the earth. More than likely, what people tend to believe is that it was just a solidarity point of a tree. It was just on its own. It surrounded the earth, or that is in the central focus, but it could be seen to the ends of the earth. But of course, symbolically, this tree would have been centrally located to describe the importance in relation to the rest of the earth. But Nebuchadnezzar was able to watch this tree grow, most likely from a tiny plant into a major tree. So in the course of this dream, in this vision, he is seeing this tree begin to take root and take life. I mean, something that it is so vast and it is so big, it begins to reach to the tops of the sky, but as well it was visible to the ends of the earth. And we learned that the wild animals and the birds and the different things, they took shelter under it. But in verse 12, in essence, I think what we're beginning to see there is that this describes, in essence, the victory and the splendor of the Babylonian Empire at this point. You know, think about it like this, that in the infancy of the Babylonian Empire, as they begin to rise to power, as things begin to branch, as things begin to, truly take place, they're a world power for a reason in this moment, to which other nations, they're going to come to them. Other peoples are going to come and seek refuge or slavery just to be under their protection almost. And so in this concept within, this time period, what we're thinking about is this tree begins to represent the Babylonian kingdom and how great it is, what it has, I don't want to say positively done for people, but just ultimately what it represents in the course of the whole entirety of the world at this point. But as we dive off into verses 13 through 18, notice what he says there. As I was lying in my bed, I also saw in the visions of my mind an observer, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He called out loudly, cut down the tree and chop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds its branches. But leave the stump with its roots in the ground and with a band of iron and bronze around it in the tender grass of the field. Let him be drenched with dew from the sky and share the plants of the earth with the animals. Now, real quickly, I want us to pick up on this, okay? In verse 15, but leave the stump with its roots in the ground and with a band of iron and bronze around it in the tender grass of the field. But notice the shift in pronouns here. Let him be drenched with dew from the sky and share the plants of the earth with the animals. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal for 7 periods of time. And this word is by decree of the observers. The matter is a command from the holy ones. This is so the living will know that the Most High is ruler over the kingdom of men. He gives it to anyone he wants and sets the lowliest of men over it. Now this is the dream that I, Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because none of the wise men of my kingdom can make the interpretation known to me, but you can, because you have the spirit of the holy God. So here we need to begin breaking this down. In verses 13 and 14 there, it references this messenger. In essence, would have taken Nebuchadnezzar by surprise, as described by the term Saul. It was something that all of a sudden, in a moment, here is this angel basically that appears before him. This is the only chapter in the Bible that describes these messengers. In essence, it means one who is awake. In the books of Enoch, Jubilees, and other books that are apocryphal based on their literature, these are wakeful ones, which is described here as watchers. And so, in essence, they're right now, as it says there, the idea is that these watchers are always awake, but specifically, they're keeping watch over the human race. And so, sometimes people, they can look at this and say, okay, these are angels, these are watchers that are keeping watch over the human race. Whenever you think of Mormons and you think of the Watchtower Society, different things like that, and Moroni, and you think of the angels that have been depicted, there's some adverse, unfortunate, heretical doctrines that have come out of different things like this, as well as whenever you think of people that consider or look after the idea of what it means to have a guardian angel. I don't want to get into that specifically. I mean, we can talk about that at another time, but whenever you think through what is being presented here, there are all kinds of thoughts and things that are flooded into what exactly these watchers mean and what they look like, okay? And so I want to kind of more or less take all those things with a grain of salt, specifically to focus on the fact that this angel appears before Nebuchadnezzar, and in this moment begins to, share down what kind of information this is. But as he goes into verses 14 and 15 there, in essence, these words are describing to Nebuchadnezzar that this message was coming with heavenly application to say that these words were important and come with a warning. So the angel in verse 14 there commands that the tree be cut down, which will force the creatures in the tree to abandon their homes. But notice, there's a command still left of its stump and roots were not to be cut, which says that the stump might be able to grow again. So there's a lot to consider here, okay? And the reason why I say this is just consider and continue to think about what we've been studying in the book of Daniel, the information and the things that we have looked at so far. There are some ties that begin to come out of this. The bronze and iron suggest that the stump is to be protected from destruction. So in essence, in their time, this band that would be and go around the bottom half of the stump would be there to secure it and protect it. Basically, like a 10, 12-inch band, it would go around the stump. It'd be there to hold it together, but in essence, it would kind of bring about a surety of life almost, okay? And so just thinking through these ideas of what this is representing, okay? This angel depicts and tells Nebuchadnezzar, chop down the tree. So there is symbolic representation here of a fall. There's symbolic representation that something is not right. There is destruction that is coming. Now, the question that I would ask is, hopefully in your mind you're sitting there thinking, well, we've heard a little bit of this before. Maybe not specifically like this, but it's generating these ideas, of course, within our minds, to which, as you see on the screen there, we're going back towards the idea of this statue, the things that we read about in chapters 2 and 3. Now, is the statue ultimately what we're, talking about in this moment? No. But what did I tell you back then? Keep this statue, keep these things in mind as to how they all unfold. Because there again, we learn based on this statue, the head of gold and then the chest of silver and different things. But notice what begins to happen. You go down and bronze and iron become part of this tree to which Nebuchadnezzar is looking at. So now, while this is a different illustration, you're seeing still yet the same culmination of events. This is, I would imagine, just kind of walking through what we've discussed over the last couple of weeks in terms of Daniel moving from chapter 3 into chapter 4, you're talking a chronological time gap potentially of about 30 years or so that has taken place. That those 30 years were obviously clearly prosperous for the Babylonian nation. But here's the thing. Something, I guess I'm led to believe at this moment, something has transpired to the place now to where Nebuchadnezzar, he's starting to derail. He has this vision, we have the, things that went on in terms of chapter 4 there, verses 1 through 9. We have those things that begin to happen, but this dream just doesn't come out of nowhere. There's some pivotal points that begin to alter and change these things. And so, hopefully in this, you're kind of keeping in mind that you're talking the Babylonians, the Medes and the Persians, the Greeks to the Romans, and then eventually to the future powers that will rule the earth, that is leading towards the eschaton, that is eschatology, the Parousia, the end time events that surround the coming of Christ, inevitably leading into that final future that is God's kingdom. And so hopefully you're kind of tying and connecting all these dots. But notice, as I said there in verses 15 and 16, see how the pronouns and the different things kind of shift and change to where it's this angel talking about a tree, and then it specifically says, let him. Okay, so now this description changes from a tree to the man. This man was to now live outside with the beast and things and not be sheltered anymore. So obviously, who is this man? Well, as we'll read on later on in a week or so here in terms of Daniel chapter 4, we find it's Nebuchadnezzar. But that is who we are talking about. But because of the elements of this nature, this man would be covered with dew. He would be protected, such as an animal would be, out in the wild. So heart here is also described as mind, that Nebuchadnezzar's mind would be altered, it would be changed, and his mind would be changed as the center of reason to now be like an animal, literally. Let's go on. This psychological phenomenon, I think I talked a little bit about it a couple of weeks ago, is described as lycanthropy. A werewolf. If you think through this idea of a half man, half wolf, a creature, in essence, that's what's kind of being described here. But what is kind of crazy about all this, the mythological creation of the werewolf actually originates from this passage. You may not be aware of that. Whenever you think of horror movies and all the things of the 70s and the 80s, different things like that, this is where a lot of those things are being generated from. And so studies show that these beliefs are still found in our time right now. People involved in these studies believe themselves to be wolves, gerbils, dogs, birds, cats, rabbits, tigers, and even unidentified animals. And we're not talking like the furries of today that want to identify as whatever they choose to believe, but we're talking people that their minds were altered to where in essence they begin to actually do these things. And then I'll give you actually one example right here. In 1946, R.K. Harrison was an Old Testament Bible scholar. He actually observed a mental patient in a British mental institution that mimicked a cow. He walked about the grounds and ate grass and he drank the water. And the only abnormal thing that actually was found was an increase in his hair growth as well as a change in fingernails. So, consider this. This was an Old Testament Bible scholar that was looking at these things literally transpire before his very eyes. Now, how this happens, or the mental faculties and the capabilities that begin to interweave itself in the middle of all this, that's above my pay grade, as the saying goes. I don't know how to describe those things, but yet all of it originates back to this point with Nebuchadnezzar. So 7 times Passover is reasonable to believe that this illness will occur. And the idea, of course, there is 7 times that it would be roughly 7 years that Nebuchadnezzar would spend out in the fields grazing like a cow, basically. In terms of his hair, we'll get into all that here in a week or two. But nevertheless, it's showing this real physical and mental change that would occur and take place over Nebuchadnezzar's life. But the decision may have involved the angels, but ultimately the decision was God's. There again, it's declared. It is known there in... pull it back up there. Verse 17. This word is by decree of the observers. The matter is a command from the holy ones. But notice, this is so the living will know that the Most High is ruler over the kingdom of men, and He gives it to anyone He wants and sets the lowliest of men over it. It doesn't matter who you are. God is able to use you and your circumstances for good. He can turn your bad circumstances as an example of what not to do, but ultimately still end up with glorification and edification back towards God. So know that that is what is able to happen here, that it was God's decision of what was going on. Then the interpretation is a blow, of course, to Nebuchadnezzar's pride by stating that even the lowest of men can rule, not just the highest. Here it is. I would imagine Nebuchadnezzar, who can defeat me? Who can bring me down? And then you have this kind of idea that the angels, the observers, the watchers, they bring through and they say, you ain't anybody. It doesn't matter how prideful you are. He can use the smartest person all the way to the lamest person. The one who can't do anything. God is able to use anyone He chooses. So imagine that kind of struggle of, well, Nebuchadnezzar, you may think you're something, but in reality you're nothing. I think that that's a lesson all of us need to kind of integrate within our minds and our lives of just, things to consider. And again, no one is able to interpret the dream. Go figure. And it was a dream. I think I would not want to know its interpretation. At this point, I'd almost just, if I was in Nebuchadnezzar's shoes, okay, just, it's done, it's over with. But what is the ultimate reality? What is the ultimate goal? So that way people will know the Most High God. And Nebuchadnezzar, he hadn't done that. Given the events of chapter 3, he comes out at the end, squeaky clean, good, God. There's something about the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The Most High God, if you'll remember, is what he refers to God as. But there again, over that 30-year gap, obviously, clearly, Nebuchadnezzar has deviated from Most High God back to Marduk or whoever else it is. And at that point, his mind is derailed. And now God is saying, let's set the record straight once again. So just know that is the reality. But in a term of application, I would always say, do not underestimate the power of God. I'll be honest with you, that's a statement that runs through my mind quite a bit, just because I don't want to assume that I can get away with anything, or not murder, but sins or different things. God is able to get a hold of us. And I don't want to be so narrow-minded that I think, okay, I can do this and I can just repent from it and I'll be okay. I want to be able to look at, or I want to look at things and say, okay, I've got to be careful. What if this sin led to this result or repercussion in my life? Am I saying God is going to manipulate or do things like that? That's not what I'm after as much as it's just a conscious decision that's lying in the back of my mind of, be careful on how you live your life, Casey, because you don't know what can lead to what God can use for His good out of my good circumstances and even my bad circumstances. So I would encourage us. There again, it's a reverential, providential fear of the Lord. It's that ability to say, God, I know that you are above all things and you are capable of doing all things. So just something to be careful with, and especially, I believe, extremely relates to what Nebuchadnezzar is talking about here. But greatness is great until we take our eyes off of God. Remember the accounts of chapter 3. There again, same principle. Whenever it's good, it is good. But we can't help but to wonder, Peter being called out onto the waters, of the Sea of Galilee, whenever Jesus said, yeah, Peter, step out of the boat, come to me. Peter was all good until he took his eyes off of Christ, right? Yeah, we're all good until we take our eyes off of God and we begin to set them on the things of this world. There's a lot to consider, a lot to evaluate, a lot to just have kind of flowing and interwoven in the back of our mind as we're walking through our day-to-day life. There again, that's the beauty, is that God knows we're fallen beings. That's His grace and His mercy that continues to walk with us, that continues to encourage us, continues to help us see, even whenever it seems like life is down and it ain't, there's no signs of it letting up. There's that peace and comfort that God is able to provide that says, it's okay. 1 Peter, in chapter 1 there, we are but pilgrims. We're just sojourners. We're aliens walking through this life. This is not our home. But even though we know those things, doesn't mean it's a license to sin or do whatever we want. There's this conscious decision that we're making in the background that's saying, God, I know you're able to forgive me. I know you will forgive me. I know you love me, and your love and kindness is steadfast over my life. But God, I don't want to rock the boat either. I don't want to intentionally be the one to, so to speak, draw out repercussions of whatever it is we've walked through. So I hope this has gave you a few things to think about. Of course, as always, if you have any questions or if there's anything that is happening or going on, feel free to reach out to me, talk to me, whatever related to our Bible lessons. But other than that, I hope y'all have a great and wonderful rest of your week. If you need anything, let me know. But otherwise, we'll see you guys later. Thank you.